Okay. Cool. Awesome.
Wow, that turns a lot faster when you zoom it out. That's a lot more helpful. Okay.
Don't zoom it so close to me.
Wow, that was zoomed in.
I don't like it when you guys have the camera.
Well, there is,
No. You saw Garrett walking around with this. They look pretty big. Oh, this didn't have to be numbered. We're not voting on this. It was just information. You didn't have to. It is numbered. I know. That's okay. I forgot to tell
Did
you.
you send me a resolution?
I'll just talk about how. Well, it's just
I can unnumber it.
No.
It was numbered 61 this morning. It is now 60.
It's totally fine. We're gonna do this.
Because I forget the endorsement of the ASUM Senate. Skip that one. What? Extra.
All right.
Yeah, we literally everyone's here. Hold on. Which minutes do you want to approve first? The final budgeting or the regular?
We'll approve them as a set.
Oh.
All right, call this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Secretary David, will you please take the roll?
Senator Anderson? Here. Senator Borgasani?
Excused.
Senator Corkish? Here. Senator Durnell?
Here.
Senator Flanagan?
Here.
Senator Fulton?
Here.
Senator Glukert? Here. Senator Gregory?
Here.
Senator Hahn?
Here.
Senator Hurley?
Here.
Senator Jimmy?
Here.
Senator Johnston?
Here.
Senator Kiefer?
Here.
Senator Nelson? Here. Senator Medina?
Here.
Senator Ream?
Excused.
Senator Rink?
Here.
Senator Sladish? Senator Tarallo?
Present.
Business Manager Parsons?
Yep.
Vice President Hanley?
Here.
President Belcher? Here.
All right, sweet. We'll now move into approval of the minutes. These are two sets of minutes, and we'll just approve them on the same slate. But does anyone want to get on my speakers list right now? We'll just go through them. We'll go through the Senate meetings minutes. If you have any corrections for final budgeting, we'll go to that one too, but we're not going to scroll through like 40 pages. So, does anyone want to have any corrections for either of the minutes? Senator Johnson, was that a correction? Senator Jimmy?
Can you switch the top, please?
Can you repeat that?
Attendance at the top.
I move to correct the last name, Jimmy.
Okay, so just take the S off. All right, there's been a motion to correct Senator Jimmy's name. Moved by Senator Jimmy, seconded by Senator Tarallo. Unanimous consent has been called. Is there any discussion or objection? Discussion or objection? Discussion or objection? Seeing none, those minutes have been corrected. Is there any more corrections that anyone wants to make? Any more corrections? Last call. All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the February 26th minutes and the final budgeting minutes. Moved by Senator Tarallo and seconded by Senator Durnell. Unanimous consent has been called. Is there any discussion or objection? Discussion or objection? Discussion or objection? Seeing none, both sets of minutes have been approved. We'll now move into public comment. Just as a reminder, senators, please no eating, passing notes, or talking during this portion. Please be attentive to our guests as they're taking time out of their day to come give public comment for ASUM. Is there any public comment tonight? Gaten, did you want to go?
I hated most of you guys, I don't know enough time to hear too much for too many things. But I have two quick little things I wanted to bring to you guys' attention. One is the emergency travel budget request for Smash Club. I just wanted to address any questions that you guys had about it, because I know it's in back to committee. The reason it was not a part of the normal travel is because our new president swore we got this for all the budgeting funds, and then I checked back and submitted before 5, so then we kind of have to go through this water process. So I just felt really bad for all the people that are not getting reimbursed for their dedication to Smash Bros. To the beginning. So I wanted to just come here and answer your questions, and then honestly to ask maybe for an additional set of funding. I think we got partially funded in the budget and finance, and any and all additional funding would go a long way towards us. We can only afford McDonald's on the road, and if we must sleep in each other's rooms because we're going to another small, so it go a long way. And so I'll first answer questions about that before I dive into my basic.
Any questions for Katie? Any questions? Senator Nelson.
Can you clarify the dates that you're traveling for your trips to Seattle?
Perfect, yeah, so I would be more than happy to address that. So essentially the way the Smash Club travel works is it's much like the sports team, where they kind of do periodic tournaments and stuff throughout the semester. And being that our greatest rival, the MSU Smash Society, potentially signed out, they have weekly events. So even though the official Smash Club doesn't travel every single weekend, we have individual members as individual members for legal reasons travel every single week. So it's kind of much more of an average, kind of subsidize the entirety of our travel. And when it comes to Seattle, we wanted to do at least 2 tournaments, if not more. But since this went through this elongated process, we kind of had a more tenuous way to actually schedule what events we go to, because if we did have it specifically in the 2 events, we would have missed one of them by now. So the whole goal is just to travel to the various regions like the Pokemon crew. We go to Canada, we go to Seattle, we go to Bozeman. So I could include the specific dates, but it's just kind of difficult to plan that far in advance. Not that answers that.
Any more questions for Katie? All right, and then if you want to continue on.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. So the second thing is I'm also the treasurer, not just for Smash Club, but also for the Missoula, it's a UM Philosophy Society, which is a potential standard. But so we do a whole bunch of events. We explained those last time here. I just wanted to come pitch one we're doing tomorrow. It is at Free Cycles. It is called Real Talk Roundtable, because the conversations go in circles, but at least the tables go. We are actually pretty proud of you on that one. And it's a fun little catered event. We will have food and drinks for anyone who wants to come, because talking is exhausting for 2 hours. But I explained this before. What it is a interdisciplinary talk between our department and another department. This time we're joining up with grad students from a program called Bridge, which focuses on the sustainability of food and water systems. And the questions we're kind of looking at are how to all come together to solve an issue like climate change or general sustainability, when everyone has different backgrounds, different senses of what they actually understand to be true. So it's kind of a meta-analysis on interdisciplinary talks. That probably sounds way fancier than it actually is, but it's a good time. Everyone gets to talk and share ideas. It's like speed dating, but for philosophy, it's a good time. So anyone who wants to come, please do that. Otherwise, it's just me and Mark.
I do have one question. This is Major Parsons.
What time is that at tomorrow?
7 p.m. at Free Cycles. If you want to just find your Facebook or whatnot, and I have actually too many credits on results actually got. But yeah, thank you.
Any more, Senator? Oh, you want to take one more question? Senator Jimmy.
I'm not there collaborating with this. I'm part of that group.
Oh, cool.
So,
hopefully see you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you very much. Is there any more public comment tonight? Any more public comment? Well, yep.
Hi, my name is Teresa, and I'm president of Zootown Cabaret. And I just wanted to come here tonight. This is my first time actually being quite in this position of asking this kind of thing. So this is new to me, so I wanted to make sure I was here and present in case anybody had any questions for me. We are requesting some funds for some PA equipment. Currently, I've been with Zutero and Cabaret since my start of school, and I'm a senior. And I've been volunteering some of my equipment to supplement for that. And in prior years, we would always be at venues that had equipment, and we would rent out equipment and rent the venues with equipment, which limited our abilities to perform and whatnot. And so the place that we've been going to no longer has equipment. So I started using my own. And I wanted to make sure that I can do whatever I can moving forward when I'm no longer here as a student and move on to other things that Zutero Cabaret keeps going on. Next year will be the 10th anniversary.
I have Senator Flanagan.
Hi, I don't necessarily have any questions. I just want to say thank you for coming and thank you for putting the request together. It was very professional and I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions? Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, any more public comment? Last call for public comment. All right, seeing none, so ends public comment.
So begins the president's report. As usual, we will start with guests. And first up, we have Devin Carpenter, the new student success director, to talk about new student orientation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Devin Carpenter. I pronounce him him and his. Thank you for having me here tonight. As was mentioned, I'm the director of new student success here at the university, which is actually a new position. And so I'm here to talk to you sort of overall about what that means, and then sort of what's going on with new student orientation and retention efforts here at the University of Montana. I first wanted to start off by talking sort of about the national level, what's been going on. The University of Montana has been involved in some really neat things. And so I am a member of NODA, which is the National Organization for Orientation, Transition, and Retention and Higher Education. So it's essentially like NASPA or ACPA for orientation specifically. And so I actually was recently elected as the Region 1 coordinator. And so I'm representing the University of Montana sort of on that national scale on the board of the national organization. So I'm pretty excited about that. We also just traveled to Las Vegas, Nevada for our Region 1 and 2 conference, and I was able to take 7 advocates with me. I'm sure you're familiar with that organization. I also served as one of their advisors, and so we were able to sort of learn from other students who were attending that conference. And we were also granted 2 awards while we were there. So our new student orientation program won the Innovative Program Award for Region 1 based on the newly redesigned program that I'm sure you're all familiar with from last fall. 2 of my students also presented and they won Best Undergraduate Presentation. So I'm pretty excited about those accolades. And we've got a whole bunch of really neat things going on with our new student orientation program. So last year, we completely sort of threw everything away and started from scratch. And we were really excited to get some data to support the things that I think we all sort of saw this fall. We saw for the first time since 2016 an increase in first year retention from fall to spring semester by 2%, which is pretty drastic having done everything we did in about 7 months. And so again, we're really excited to continue this momentum forward. And so I'm just going to run through some updates for sort of changes and additions that we've made for this year, and then I'm happy to answer any questions I have this year. All first-time students at either campus are being asked to attend both a Veritrax registration event in the springtime, as well as attend our full week-long orientation program. And so we're excited to have them be fully integrated into that process. We also have an online orientation program that has often been directed towards the Missoula College population as well as our transfer students. We changed that this year. There are 2 separate orientations, essentially consolidating them into one online orientation just to make things a little more simple for everybody. And again, those Missoula College students are not being asked to do that online. We're asking them to come to campus. And on a case-by-case basis, of course, a lot of people's online situation if they need that. But all transfer students, starting on Monday, were receiving an invitation to begin their online orientation. So that was March 9th. And we're really proud of how much earlier this year we're doing things, given the situation we were presented with last year. So in just since Monday, we've already had almost 20 transfer students complete their online orientation. They're now being advised and registering for their fall 2020 classes. Also with that Veritrax, last year, as you might remember, the Veritrax early registration days, these are where students are asked to physically come to campus with their families and sign up for their classes, meet with their advisor, get their grades card, really take care of the business. This is the nuts and bolts piece. Last year we had 5 of these events, and this year we added 4, so we're doing 9 in total, plus an online option for students who are not able to physically come to campus. We also added 2 Saturday dates, really thinking that we might be able to meet the needs better of families within a driving distance who can't take time off work. And so these are starting a couple hours later, so that ideally families could drive in that morning and then return home that day and not have to miss any of the weekdays. And so those 2 days, unsurprisingly, have the most people signed up for them right now, other than the very first one. So I'm already preparing campus that there'll probably be more on Saturdays next year. Registration opened, I think, about a month ago, and we have over 250 students signed up to come to one of those Bear Tracks events, and over 70 students planning on completing it online. Again, this time last year, I don't know if we even had an invitation out for this event, and so we are really sort of moving forward with this plan and getting the word out a lot earlier so that we don't lose that deal for students that potentially happened last year. Moving forward to the whole week of new student orientation, last year it was a whole 7-day thing from Saturday to Saturday. Based on feedback from both campus as well as our new students, that seemed to be a little bit too long. I know some of the senators, president, vice president were involved in helping with that, and I think they can attest to the fatigue that we were seeing towards the end of the week. So there was also some issues with move-in, as our housing colleagues may have already talked to you about. Doing move-in on a weekend, it was difficult to get volunteers, and so all those things came together, and we decided to go with this 5-day program, with move-in being on Monday, August 24th, and then the orientation program itself being Tuesday through Friday. So it's still a week in a sense, but it's not that full 7 days, and it's all on weekdays, and we're hoping that we'll see a better show for our campus to help out with move-in and arrival and all of those sorts of things. The Big Sky Experience portion is sort of that experiential piece where students are either on or off campus, interacting with the campus or community organization, doing that sort of immersion experiential piece. Nothing really has changed with this. It's still about 9 hours. It's still over the course of 3 days, and we already have about 15 partners signed up through a new process that's going to hopefully streamline things for us to do their experiences again. We have several people who've already reached out before we're ready for that from news sites. And so in just 1 year, the word is out and community organizations are seeking to partner with us rather than me knocking on doors on August 1st, trying to get more people to do this. So the notion of changing the culture of what it means to become a student has been readily apparent in just this year, with people signing up for Bear Track so early and then the community already reaching out to us to participate in this program. We also, one other really neat thing that we were able to accomplish this year is, FWE, the Freshman Bonus Experience, is part of the orientation Big Sky Experience. That can only accommodate about 130 students, and it does have an additional cost for these students to go backpacking and on rafting trips. And so we actually were approached by a donor who wanted to create an experience at the Buckhead Lake Biological Station. We were unable to do it there, but we're still using their crew and their researchers to do something at their Middle Fork research location. And so we're able to accommodate 20 students at no extra cost to do an overnight program, much like FWE this year. In the event that it goes well, which we see no reason why it won't, we're hoping to move forward with an endowment to continue that program forever. With moving into the second half of the week, that's where you see things that are a little more of that traditional orientation piece, that social and academic transition. There was a heavy lift last year to try and create these various classes and lecture and lab experiences and things. And it was a lot of work. It was a big lift from everyone on campus and faculty, and I don't know that it met our goals very well. And so what we've done is sort of rethought that in a more sort of 10,000-foot view, first year experience sort of way, so that it's an intro to college rather than a really specific intro into your degree area. And so talking about the academic expectations of what it means to be a student at the University of Montana, while still providing some opportunities for students to engage directly with their academic department, because we know that's just as important as meeting friends and getting connected to an out-of-the-classroom experience. So we're moving forward with those. So hot, we were blessed with beautiful weather, but it ended up being a little bit of a detriment because it was so hot. So we're excited to be able to use the ASUM Center. The other big thing that we're not changing this time around is students were put into a different small group halfway through the week. They have their Big Sky Experience group and then an academic group. Rather than doing that, we're going to keep them with the same small group the whole time. And so they are really able to build those connections with both the advocate leader as well as the other students in the group. And we think that will really help foster those connections a lot better. We also have a goal of integrating diversity more holistically into the entire week. Not a presentation, that's not what we're talking about. In some more subtle ways, we'll actually be sending out videos introducing students to a lot of the academic and social support services, things like the Branch Center, American Indian Student Services, DSS, OSS, all the acronyms, so that they know that they have a landing spot before they actually get here on campus. And so those videos will be going out all summer, but will also help fill the gap between when they potentially come to Bear Tracks on August 10th and then they don't come into us until August. So there's several months in there where they'll actually still be hearing directly from me. And so yeah, those emails will be coming from me. We're also working on integrating sustainability more holistically into the program. We gave out a bunch of cool things last summer. Some of them I think were effective. I still see people wearing them. Some of them I've never seen again since orientation. And so we're really trying to be mindful about what we're giving students, and it's something that they're actually going to keep using and that we'll keep seeing on campus. Just as the very last thing I have for you, really the whole point with my move, so for those of you, I think you do care, because you're part of student government. So I used to work in the undergraduate admissions office. That's where orientation has been housed for forever. I'm at the University of Montana. I was serving in that role since fall of 2017. And just this past November, there was a decision to move orientation and sort of new student programs out of admissions and sort of the enrollment side over to the student success side, and thinking more forward about what an entire first year experience will look like. So I report to Brian, so I'm part of the student success team now, which is all the other student affairs directors on campus. And so we can sort of work more concertedly together to do our programming. One of the ideas that we're working on right now is the notion of gamification and how we can encourage the students of the Big Sky Experience groups to keep getting back together throughout their whole first year so that it doesn't end with orientation. So we're workshopping some different things, maybe there's a point system, kind of like House Points in Harry Potter, where, if all of your group goes to their advising appointment for spring semester, you get points, or all of you show up to the first home basketball game, or just different things to get them involved in both their academic pieces, the career exploration, as well as those student engagement pieces. So that's what I've been doing since the last time I talked to you. What questions do you have?
All right, it looks like we've got a few. First up, Senator Fulton.
Hi, thank you for coming out. I just want to say, being a transfer student, when I went through my new student orientation, it was, hi, I'm here. They're like, oh, you're a transfer student? Okay, bye. But the fact that you're doing the online, it actually makes it so much better for transfer students, because I remember trying to find out who my advisor was, how do I sign up for classes, and it's really nice that you're taking transfer students into consideration.
Yeah, thank you. Transfer students are always a unique population because half of them want to do all of the traditional orientation things and half of them are like, why would I do that? And so transfer students will sort of be geared towards that online piece, but everywhere they'll see it will say, if you want to also come in person, you're more than welcome to, and so you transfer students.
Senator Flanagan.
Yeah, kind of just bouncing off of that, I was wondering if you could sort of walk the Senate through what a online orientation looks like. Yeah, that's a great question. So the online orientation is built in Moodle, and there, I as much as possible, tried to make it interactive and broke it up with videos from KPCN. The advocates filmed a bunch of videos to sort of mimic that small group conversation piece that you would get in in-person orientation. And really, the online orientation, it is very much focused on getting students registered in classes, making sure that they understand the various hoops you have to jump through in order to be prepared for your advising appointment. And so there's a couple different sections, it talks about general education requirements at the university, how to evaluate, your transcript as a transfer student, what that looks like. There's a special section for Missoula College students that talks about the different services and things that are on the River campus. And then it sort of talks about, there's a whole list of pre-registration steps, so things like clearing your immunization and housing holds, making sure that you pick up your grist card and have your financial aid away, like just all those steps that you need to do to successfully become a student.
And then there's a section about what advising looks like and everything that advisors are used for outside of just, getting your PIN every year. And then it walks them through how to use sort of degree works as well as the registration planner. And then they do a little survey and that automatically triggers an email to the student that says you completed orientation and you're ready for an advising appointment, which then gives them a link to find their advisor and instructs them to reach out to them. It also triggers an email to me so that I'm able to mark them as completed so they stop getting reminders to do their stuff from us. And then it also triggers an email to the Office of Student Success, who then sends that email directly to the student's specific advisor, so that the advisor then can proactively also reach out to the student and say, hey, I see that you're ready for an advising appointment. We can do that. After the survey, there's also additional sections in the reports that talks about how to get involved, additional academic opportunities such as GOI and then Honors College, and then there's one more section, Student Success. It goes through and gives information about all the various Student Success offices.
Vice President Hanley.
Hi, Devin. Thank you so much for coming tonight. So I know you talked about Big Sky Experience sites, and you have a lot more this year than you did last year at this time. But how many more Big Sky Experience sites do you need in order to fulfill new student orientation next year?
Yeah, we do not have a lot more yet. We have a couple new sites, which is exciting. I think we only have 12 or 15. And I think the numbers that put us at like 300 students. And so we've got a long way to go still. If we're expecting 1706, if that's the number, I can't remember if that includes transfer students or not, but last year we had 38 sites, or something around there. Don't quote me on that number, but somewhere right around there. And so we're gonna hopefully have, I would say probably 40 to 45 sites. And it always depends, like last year, Blackstone Launchpad took like 150 students. And so if they don't do it again, then we're gonna need additional sites to meet that need. So the short of it is, please send me more sites. And there is no deadline. We'll keep getting and confirming sites until we have enough spots. The problem is it's all a guessing game because we have no idea how many students are actually going to show up. So
Last year, ASUM hosted a site, and by that I mean Vice President Hanley and I hosted a site, and from that we definitely learned a lot of valuable lessons about what worked and what didn't work. So if you're interested in being an executive or you're a leader of a student group that's going to do a Big Sky experience, please come talk to us about that. We'd love to chat. Next up, Senator Medina.
Hey Devin, thanks for coming out. You talked a little bit about some of the sustainability stuff that you're going to be possibly doing. I was just wondering, what stuff would you get out and maybe give out to students, new students, and then also maybe have you guys considered lessening that stuff just because it goes, a lot of it goes to the waste?
Yeah, so one of the first things I did when I got here was, the conference app that's in the Montana app, like they use for diversity and all that stuff. So I had them develop that for me for orientation, and so that I could stop printing schedules in the first place. So that's why that even exists. It actually was for orientation. And so that was one of the first things. So we don't print any schedules at all. So right after that, that's thousands of dollars and I don't know how much paper that we don't print anymore. We also really limited the number of flyers and things that are in there and put them in sort of a booklet that's just a couple pages. And so really thinking about if they're getting some information at Bear Tracks and they don't get that information again at orientation, and then they're also going to get information in their first year seminar. And so where are the other ways that we can intersperse this information rather than just giving them a bunch of stuff? So those are some things right off the bat as far as the traditional folder that a student would receive. As far as the swag and things that we're giving out, we are planning on doing the t-shirt again that everyone will wear on their first day. I saw someone wearing one today, people wear those all the time. And so that I think is a useful item. It also puts people into the good spirit if they don't have money to afford something right away. So everyone has a swan gray shirt. We last year gave out bucks and some other things, and we're not doing that. This year we're really looking at giving one gift to the student that is really worthwhile. We have a contract with Yeti, and so we're going to explore potentially giving everyone a Yeti water bottle or something of that sort. And then that would lead into this notion of gamification and sustainability. So which team can refill their water bottles the most or something like that. So we're not just talking at students about sustainability, they're actively doing something. We've also talked about not having cups in the food zoo during that time, and everyone has to bring the cup that we gave them. I don't know if logistically that will work, but I think it would be cool if we could try something like that. Or maybe you get points if you bring your cup and don't use one. I don't know, something like that. We're tossing around a lot of ideas. The students also get their important Grizz wristbands, which I still see people wearing around. The families will get their tote bag, which are reusable. And that's pretty much it. The students will have a name tag and a lanyard they can reuse, so the lanyard can be something anytime. And then, yeah.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes.
Cool, thank you. Thank you for updating on all the sustainability stuff. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Senator Blucher?
Hi.
Hi, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for all the work that you put into orientation. I know as a senior, my freshman year, when I came here, I hope I don't hurt anyone's feelings, but orientation was not fun at all. It was honestly, like, I didn't really learn a lot. I didn't go to anything, and I'm really jealous at all of this new stuff, and it makes me want to be a freshman again. I have two questions, kind of. So I was just wondering for the online orientations, I guess that this is more of a comment. I think it might be helpful to, I don't know when those go on. Is it like now, like through the summer, or?
Yeah, so it turned on Monday and it is closed on July 31st.
Okay, I don't know, maybe connecting a student, kind of like a leader, like we do with in-person orientations that the online students can reach out to. Because I know there's something about talking to a UN student that's kind of different than talking to maybe you or a faculty member or an advisor, just like talking about general, like, I don't know, that's how I learned about like how to take certain classes that I really enjoyed. So I think that could be something that's really helpful, maybe an advocate or volunteers. And then, can I have a follow-up?
Yes.
I guess I have a question about how how you're making sure advisors are kind of reaching out to those students, because I know kind of we have a little bit of an advising problem on this campus. So I just want to make sure that those advisors are reaching out and being helpful to these new students over online.
Yeah, so I also regularly go present to the advising directory. I don't know what that thing is called, but and I work pretty much every day with Brian French to make sure that all of our systems and communications that we're talking to each other about everything. I think that's one of the biggest problems we have on this campus is communication between departments. And so the team of stakeholders I have together, I think, is able to get that word out in a really great way. With the new advising structure that's Brian and his team have been working to implement with the advising managers and things, that I think I've seen a lot of really great progress even in just the past year. And so, yeah, we work with them. We can't mandate that the advisors are calling out to students, but I think the culture is shifting that the people we have in those positions want to do that outreach. I know I already have in my head a couple colleges that
Decorum.
That's my boss. Yes, that outreach is happening really well in a couple colleges, and then at some of the other colleges, I think that's what we're working on next. And Brian is very aware of that and is on top of that. With things like this poll, because essentially with Fair Tracks, without getting too much into the weeds, we do core course registration ahead of time. If you remember, you filled out like a survey, and then your advisor makes a schedule, and then you meet with them at orientation. Well, we don't do that at orientation, you do it at Fair Tracks now. So advisors are doing this registration now, and then we'll have these large group advising meetings during Fair Tracks with these students. So that will be a first connection they have with at least someone from their college. And then during orientation, there'll be time for them to actually meet with their specific advisor in the department. Another thing that we're doing, thank you, Brian, is part of that summer video plan that we have in place. One of the last communication they're going to get before a safe travel, see you next week email is going to be one directly from their advising manager with their picture that says, "This I'm your person," basically. And so that outreach will be happening too. So we're working on it.
Senator Jimmy.
Hey, Devin, I'm a graduate student, and I'm wondering if there is any university-sponsored organization for graduate sponsored.
There is, and it's run by the graduate school, and that's effectively all that I know.
Senator Kiefer?
Hi, thanks for being here. So I was just wondering if you could talk more about what you're doing to promote DSS, because just working there, I know that one of the things that kind of happens is students don't know about this resource until like the very end of their academic careers, and they're missing out on a lot of like really valuable resources and like federal laws that could actually help them succeed in school. So I was hoping you could just expand on that a little more.
Yeah, so a couple things. Last year, it was included in sort of all the online orientations. There's also, at all of the bear tracks, DSS is present to table in the morning during check-in, and then someone, Mika, usually is presenting on a panel to families during the bear tracks event. In the online bear tracks for those students in campus, that was part of the student support session, so I'll admit that was a little passive way to get in touch with students. There's also the bear fair during the first day of orientation on campus, where they are also tabling in a fairly passive way. Some things that we're doing to be a little more active this time around is at bear tracks, part of their booklet will be a today's to-dos, like literally don't leave campus unless you've done this today. And one of them will be set up meetings with any support offices you need. And so DSS, TRIO, ASS, all of those things will be on there, especially for the programs that you need to apply to, like TRIO and DSS, sort of thing, that sort of thing. I think the video is also going to be really helpful. The point of these videos is to inform students that they have a home here before they get here. So that the native student coming from part N knows that they have a spot to like go hang out when they get to campus, and that they have a community here before they get here. So that the LGBT student knows that there's a Land Alliance on campus, on the branch center, so those sorts of things. And so same thing with DSS. They're actually going to do a video with TRIO, because there seems to be a lot of crossover often with those. That really is just like, hey, did you know that this program even exists, and that like in college you have to ask for stuff if you have a 504 or an IEP, and so like really educating students on the difference in expectation when you come to a college campus way ahead of time. If you have more ideas, I'm open.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Director Carpenter? Senator Flanagan?
Hi, the question about, I believe you said the biggest factor is sort of the overlap that has with student groups. I was just wondering like what steps a student group has to take in order to be a part of that, and kind of what it looks like, how it highlights the student group, how the student group is able to impact the orientation experience. Something I was curious about because I wasn't able to really be a part of the orientation at all.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Big Sky experience, really what it's meant to do is to create a sense of belonging and a sense of community. It's based on that notion of community that, you know, if you struggle setting up a tent or like hiking up a mountain together, you're forced to like talk to each other and get along at some point in some way. And so that really is at the base level what these Big Sky experiences are meant to do. Like, let's struggle through something a little bit and then get to know a little bit about where we are. And so that's why community partnerships are so great, because they get to learn about places like the Generating Peace Center or the MAM or Drop Unlimited, and then realize that they can get a job there or volunteer there or be involved in an organization. And so for a student group to be involved, the Student Involvement Network did one, the ASUM did one. I know there's a couple of student groups I'm getting well, like backcountry hunters and anglers are they student group on campus. There were a good number of student groups that got involved, especially when they have a partnership with a community organization. I know that helps with some resources. And so what that looks like, I can send the link to submit a proposal. And the proposal sounds formal, like you get to do it, but I just needed to submit the information on this form. Essentially, then we'll work with you to make sure that the experience is going to be engaging in what we're aiming for. And ultimately, it's a 9-hour commitment. Other than, planning, of course, is going to be more time. And so it's 3 hours on the Tuesday afternoon and 3 hours on Wednesday and Thursday morning. And the same student, the same group of 20 students, or however many students you want to take, will be with you each of those days. We'll transport them to and from wherever it is they're going, feed them. Like, all you got to do is facilitate those 3 hours, essentially, or those 9 hours.
Yep, follow up.
Yep.
And then I was just wondering what way like student group leaders are contacted and informed about this, or if that is happening?
Yeah, so I'm not sure that happened. I think we were focusing more at the sort of campus and community organization level. But I'm happy to send a email to the ASUM Senate group coordinator to get that sent out to everybody.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that that was a really rewarding process for Ethan and I, or Vice President Hanley, and I to go through to see all the students by the end of it start to become friends. And it was also really interesting by the third day, they stopped showing up because they were hanging out with each other, which was exactly the point. So that's really
They started ignoring you after about 2 days, and that's
Yeah.
the point.
It's like, I wonder if that's how faculty feel. Vice President Hanley.
Yeah, so we had the pleasure of doing both, hosting a Big Sky experience and being orientation leaders last year. And just one recommendation, if any of you are interested, don't do both. Just do one or the other. It was so hard to do both. So.
Yeah, and they'll get real tired of you real quick. They have to hang out with you and only you all day.
I'm hoping to have to hire orientation leaders this year, but we'll see.
Awesome. Any more questions or comments? Great, looks like you're free to go.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming, Kevin. Up next, we have the Student Conduct Code Revision Task Force, and it looks like today we have Sandy Curtis, who is the Executive Director of UN Housing and Community Standards, Kelly Magnuson, the Associate Director, Office of Community Standards, and Pamela Altamayer. Did I say that correctly? Good. Assistant Director of Student Conduct, and then also please note that Senator Anderson has a week to describe her name tonight, and Vice President Hanley are also on this task force. Take it away.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. Every time I come to ASUM, I think to myself, back to my college days when I was a member of the Student Association for 4 years. So I love coming back. As you may know, this past in March of 2019, when Dr. Swager came to campus, she actually asked if we could move conduct, which is now called Community Standards, over to the not necessarily to the housing operations, but if some of us in housing would actually work in this area also. And so Kelly used to be our assistant director for conduct on the residence hall side, but she moved to the associate director for community standards and has actually been, she does most of our day-to-day work in community standards for students across the university who don't live in university housing. And then we hired Pamela Altmaier this past summer to come in and actually do and oversee most of the housing conduct that happens through UN Housing. And as this transition happened, we knew that it was time to do a conduct code revision. And Lucy Francis, General Counsel, asked if we would take that over and start working on that. And so what we did is we pulled together a group from across campus of all the shared governance units, and we started meeting last April. And we met all through the summer and through most of the fall semester. And it was really amazing to work with such a great group of people who gave up their time and their effort and their knowledge and their skills to actually put this, to do this revision for the Student Code of Conduct. And so if you could go to the next screen, we have a quick presentation, next one after that, sorry. Just to talk a little bit about it. We haven't really done a comprehensive review of our conduct code for quite some time. They did do a really brief one in 2013. However, it was not with a lot of different people across the campus. It was just a really quick one because we had to implement some of the Title IX things that had to happen in the Code of Conduct at that point. So we did, Kelly and Pamela are actually going to go through the nuts and bolts, but we did do some, most of it came for the Code of Conduct, for our general misconduct section and some reworking of that. There's not a lot of changes actually to the academic misconduct part for this code revision. And we wanted to make sure that we aligned with the MUS system. Those are some things that they're looking at. We also looked at Montana State's Code of Conduct because they've been doing it. They revised their Code of Conduct about 3 years ago, 4 years ago maybe. And then we also looked at best practices from the CURB, which is like a risk management group, a national risk management group, and then the National Association of College and University Attorneys. So we looked at their model codes as we were running through this code revision here. And we wanted to improve the readability of this particular document for students, faculty, and staff across the campus. And simplify it. And we also wanted to take out some of the legalese terms that were in there. So I'm going to turn it over to Pamela and to Kelly. We're going to talk about some of the restructuring and review of some of the things that we did.
Hello, I'm Kelly Mason. I'm going to kind of go to the next slide. So I know it's probably hard to read. I'm trying to put a lot on there, not make it real long. Basically, our main goal was kind of taking our current document and making it more user-friendly and understandable. Often we sit and meet with students, and a lot of the jargon in there sounds very court-like or legal, and really that's our main thing is that we get to have a conversation, we get to kind of talk about behavior and kind of educational outcomes with that. As Sandy already said, the academic misconduct, we really only had edits for that as far as offices that changed or titles for people. Nathan Lindsay could not be here tonight, but he pretty much was part of this too. And I know we went through a lot of different things reviewing the academic side, but there were no procedure changes, no code changes, nothing like that. We really reworked the general misconduct section. As it says there, we put it kind of into 10 main sections. If you can think about the current code, if you've read that or worked with it at all, we have about 22 codes under general misconduct. Some are very vague, some are very specific. So we kind of went through those, things that we liked in that, things that we liked in other codes or model codes that we looked at, and try to kind of group things together that seem to fit. One that I guess I just bring to example, number 9 in our current code just says violation of public policy, and that could be anything from smoking on campus, or I guess tobacco on campus, to tampering with fire safety. So we really kind of wanted to break the law a little bit more and be more specific as far as what were they in violation of versus just a general statement. And I think for conduct boards, both academic will have a conduct board, general misconduct has a conduct board. There really weren't any changes to those, other than maybe titles and office and naming things or renaming things to the office for things.
So like we mentioned, I'm Pamela, by the way. Like we mentioned, we really wanted to make sure that we looked at the MUS system and be able to work with our partners who are in very similar environments and positions as us. If you are likely aware within policy, within states, different states have different expectations, just thinking about marijuana as an example. So really wanting to make sure that we understand and are in alignment with the state's expectations, but in no way are we like copy and paste. Like we also know that we're unique and that we are a different campus. And so we really used it to look over what we could do as like a possibility, but not making sure that we were just copying everything that they were doing. Also, it is a priority across the entire MUS system to try to get more in alignment with each other and make sure that our policies and our procedures are somewhat similar, just to make sure that the entire system can support students. So the other aspect is that we were looking at different state law and different legislation that has been coming out. As we mentioned, the last update was in 2013, which is only a minor update. As you also probably are aware, there's a lot of lawsuits and things that have happened since then. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were looking at the different things that were happening within federal, county, state, as well as in our city ordinances to make sure that we were updated and making sure that we were providing all of the rights to the students that should be given to students, and also making sure that we were minimizing any sort of risk or liability to the campus as well. So let's just switch over to the next slide. We also looked at best practices. Sandy mentioned that we looked at NIFR as well as a legal association to make sure that we were using best practices that were happening across the country. This was a lot within the procedures and making sure that our policies, again, we're providing the rights to our students, as well as still holding them to a high standard so that we can have the integrity of the campus in an environment where people can do their academics, do their living, and be part of our campus without having safety concerns or other concerns. The biggest, we are working hand in hand with ASUM and not completely separate, making sure that those are connected. We are collaborating so we can both hold student groups accountable as well as the individuals who are doing the misconduct within those student groups. So I know MOU is going to be covered next, but that is going to be one of the major changes other than regrouping our policies. And then the next slide, which is our last one, one of the biggest things is making sure that we removed a lot of the legalese and making sure that it was readable for our students so that they actually understand what the expectations are before they're going through a conduct process. And like, well, now it's too late. Now you have to speak about it, right? We want to make sure that they understand what those are. Even just down to the standard of proof with the preponderance of the evidence, many students don't know what that means. So making sure that not only do we say preponderance of the evidence, we're also saying that it's more likely than not that something occurred. So it's really separating us from the legal process to promote what Kelly was mentioning, which is an educational process, and that we are not part of the court process, and that we have different rights and different expectations of our students. That is all of our presentation. So I will move over to
All right, it looks like we just have a couple at the moment, but if you do have questions, I encourage you to ask them now before we launch into general discussion. Senator Ferrara.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for coming up tonight. This wonderful presentation. This is a question for any one of you. In one of your subsections for general misconduct, you listed an offense would be interference with lawful freedom of expression. I was just wondering if you could dive a little bit more into what an interference with the lawful freedom of expression would look like.
So as you know, people have that right to freedom of expression here on campus, and so if somebody is scheduled to speak and people are there and disrupting, so somebody couldn't, that could be considered a part of that code violation.
Yes.
I guess would it have to be like a physical obstruction? I mean, because isn't protesting fall under freedom of expression as well? Would it have to be a more physical barrier, I suppose?
It doesn't always have to be a physical barrier. It could be physical, but it could also be that the noise and the disruption that's happening is so great that that person can't actually do and talk about their speech and actually get it out.
Thank you.
Senator Hahn.
Hey, I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. Pam, you might be able to best answer this. When did MSU last update their student code of conduct? As you were reviewing those? Do you know?
In 2017.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, I'm in for this year. She might get it more.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Senator Durnell.
Hi, I guess when I was reading through these changes, one of them that I didn't know if there was a change or not was when students graduated. After they graduated, they are still held to the code of conduct in some ways. I was wondering if that was a change that was made or if that's something that's always in place or if I'm just clear.
What you might be referring to is that once somebody graduates, we have to hold their records for 5 years past their graduation date. And then after that, those records are expunged from the system. So is that the section that you were looking at by any chance?
I mean, possibly is. My impression though is that they were still being held to like the terms of the conduct. Not like in their everyday life, but like if certain, I guess, issues came up, they were still held accountable from the code of conduct. I might just be overall confused, but if anyone wants to answer, kind of
I'm gonna go VP Hanley.
Yeah, so I don't think they're held to the student conduct code after the terms. I think the only reference that was in there past the date of graduation was for records being kept. If they were to then become a student again and they had a conduct record, then they would be readmitted with their conduct record being on their admission. So.
Senator Anderson?
There's also section there defining what a student is. And I know that, and I obviously don't have the code right in front of me for a moment, but I know that like if you agree to come in your lane housing, you're considered a student, so that might be the section you're referring to, but I don't think it applies after graduation unless you've like intended to join a master's or professional program on campus without already, then you would still be considered a student.
Senator Kiefer, did you want to answer that question?
Yeah,
Or do you want to speak yourself?
Yeah, I think possibly one of the other things was that like after you graduated, if there was something on your record, like while you were a student, that you could be still held accountable of. But
Most college applications, whether it's for undergrad or graduate, ask if you've either been disciplined and placed on university probation, suspension, or expulsion from another institution. So you may be referencing that section. I know they're trying to find this section right now. So that might be what you looked at in taking a look at it, but and that's a standard that you have to put it on that next college application, and then release your record so that other institution can know what the problem is.
So I think I know what you're referring to. So under jurisdiction, it says that we have a jurisdiction even if the conduct was discovered after the degree was awarded. Is that what you were referring to? Which would mean that if the incident occurred during the time that you were a student and we find out afterwards, we are able to adjudicate because you were by definition a student at the time of the incident, regardless of your current. Okay. So that is where we can retro with that condition.
Thank you for the clarification.
Senator Flanagan.
Hi, so I noticed in one of the slides that it said there was a section added for hazing, bystanding, and harassing. So does this mean that in our current or previously defined code we didn't have any violations set up for those items, or just that a section was created to group these items into a section?
It was expanded more on, and there is a hazing code currently, but I think bystanding got added. And the harassment kind of right now is handled under the discrimination policy, but that is policy in itself is not part of the code. It always was part of the code, but it is one of these. But the bystanding part that he's kind of expanded a little more clear.
Any more questions or comments for guests? That was the end of my speakers list. Okay, it looks like you're free to go. Off the hook. Thank you so much for coming. And before we move into the informational item, we are going to take a 3-minute recess.
You said blood. What a blood.
Oh no, I should have given you all that candy.
What? No, you definitely should have. It's like the one thing that's keeping me awake right now. Thank you for that one.
You're welcome.
I'm waiting for it. I'm gonna do a 20-minute public comment. What are you gonna do? Something I can't do it. The first meeting of the year.
Oh, like your comments before the meetings.
And then
Okay, sorry. No,
Right there on my please. I was thinking about declining your Facebook.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, that's fine by me. I post
My
too much.
finger actually slipped, so it was confirmed.
I post too much political jargon.
Oh, goodness gracious. That's what I figured.
Are you and Noah matching, by the way?
Yeah. Very cute, isn't it?
Okay.
No.
You look like French villains.
Dude, yeah, like
Yeah, like maniacal laughter.
no, like they look kind of like modern what Team Rocket would look like now. Like
Yeah.
everyone. I feel like this is the team. I feel that. I feel that.
That's a good look.
Brian got some pizza. Yeah.
Brian, thank you, Brian. The number of resolution being tonight, that is all correct information, right?
On the agenda that's printed out, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The resolution in Abigail's is just an informational item, so you're not actually voting on it.
That's why it has draft written across.
Secretary JJ, did you pick it up?
I did not. Let me.
You got it? While you're down there, there's another one too.
Yeah,
These are from a while ago.
I'm totally okay.
When I was doing stuff today, I must have dropped some.
Please return to your seats, senators.
Yeah, I didn't print out the MOU, sorry. MOU, I forgot to, I didn't know it needed to be printed out, so I just.
I now call this meeting back to order at 7:04 p.m. So now we're going to move into the informational item, the changes on board on members' organization procedure regarding revision to the student conduct code. I know these items are in a certain order, but we're gonna go ahead and talk about SB 62 first, just because I think that makes the most sense, and I'll let Vice President Hanley have first comment on that.
Okay, so just to start off with, we're not voting on this tonight. It is under informational item, and so just be aware that we are not gonna be voting on this tonight. So there's a couple things with this that I just want everyone to be aware of. The first thing is that we are creating a separate board of members policy for the adjudication of the student conduct code for student groups that violate that code. So this is going to be different than like student groups violating our own policies, whether that's fiscal policy and that's adjudicated by the Board on Budget and Finance, or whether that's they don't meet the recognition criteria and they're not afforded recognition / recognition is stripped from them. So just a couple things I want to highlight. The first is that under this new procedure for board on members, there's a couple things. One, it's just going to be a closed session unless legally we have to make it an open session. So that's something, it just makes it easier for us to be like, it's always going to be closed, since pretty much 10 times out of 10, it's going to be confidential information that we can't release to the public. The second thing is that in here in paragraph H of section 4, the board will now have the ability to do financial sanctions for the group if it is warranted. And this is only as of now for adjudication of violations of the student conduct code. This is to A, streamline the process, B, give the board on members a lot more broad authority in determining sanctions But C, and most importantly, we don't have to kick it back and forth between boards in case we need to do financial sanctions for the group. This streamlines the process to where it goes from one board to the Senate instead of going from one board, jumping to another board and then to the Senate. So if you have questions about that, let me know. I know Section 21 of fiscal policy makes it very unclear about that. And then the third thing that's changing is that this isn't automatically being forwarded to the Senate. And in here, what's more than likely going to change for the next time we see it / vote on it is it's going to be a seconded motion from the board, and it's going to be a 2/3 vote to do anything still, but it will still act as a seconded motion like a committee report does, like for BNF, as well as any other things that require a seconded motion. The other thing is that it also dictates the procedure of the Senate meeting. I know that's kind of unusual for bylaws, but it is sometimes typical to have procedures outlined in bylaws as Article 5, Section 5 lays out for the Constitutional Review Board. It's not uncommon to have procedure laid out in the bylaws for a meeting. And then the last thing is pretty self-explanatory. This resolution will be updated. I know the numbering and the lettering is off for the governing documents. That's because this resolution was written in August when we only had 6 articles for the bylaws, and now we have 7 articles. So all the numbering and everything will be updated by the time it gets presented to you all on March 25th. So.
Okay, and how I'm gonna structure this discussion is I'm gonna let each item be explained because they all kind of work together, and then I'll take a speakers list throughout, and then we'll start from there after we do each one. So now I'll go ahead and explain the student group MOU, if you wanna pull that up. So basically what that does is it creates an agreement that ASUM will have with the administration regarding the relationship between individual student conduct violations and student group conduct violations. So this basically outlines how our investigations will work together. This means that ASUM will agree to report acts of individual student misconduct to the parties in the MOU should we find out about them, and vice versa. They will also inform us about student group conduct should they find out about them. I know this seems like something that's common sense that we should all be doing anyway for the good of the community, but it's just to make sure that both parties are held accountable should eventually someday someone who's not as lovely as the 3 of us or as lovely as them are in charge of this process. That's pretty much what it does. Senator Anderson, do you have anything to add?
No, but if you guys have any questions about like how the terms were defined or anything, please ask me, because I work on this with the Blue Law Center, and I would very much appreciate to get those questions now, later.
And then additionally, I will let you know that I received last night some edits from Lucy Franz University Legal Counsel. Most of them were pretty straightforward and just strengthening the language a little bit, but keeping the same intent. We will have a final meeting on Monday to come up with a consensus on what exactly the language should be, but it shouldn't change too much. So I'll bring this up again in my report next time. And then I'll let Senator Anderson talk about the confidentiality agreement.
Oh, wait. Okay, so this is an agreement that we wrote on recommendation from Lou. So the purpose of this confidentiality agreement is basically to let senators know they're not allowed to go run to any outside source, let them know what happened if they don't agree with the decision. It's a legal document that the senators would be signing as soon as the first meeting took place at the Senate and or the first meeting of the fall. This is also related to the impeachment, being 51% if you violate this. It's pretty straightforward. I drafted it using several different boilerplate confidentiality agreement and then went over it with Blue. There will be one where instead it says "and senator," it'll be "and executive" for the executive team. But for the general purpose of this, it's just literally changing it. Yeah. You guys have any questions?
Okay. And then Vice President Hanley is going to talk about the relationship between constitutional revisions in this process.
So we kind of already talked about this in January, but I'll just go over it again. The couple changes that were made to accommodate for this was the impeachment, which Senator Anderson just touched on, adding to Article 4 that impeachment can be, a senator can be removed by a 50% plus 1 vote. by the ASUM Senate, and that should give a process for the impeachment if they were to violate the confidentiality agreement. This was a recommendation given to us by Director Villames. The next one is Article 6, which you also saw during that January meeting. That's just to adjust the board size, which has been needed forever, but nonetheless, updating the student conduct code is a good enough reason to change the board size in order to make it adequate. It also states in there that the board will monitor member compliance with student conduct code. It's probably the most brief changes, but it was needed in there just so that we can explain all the changes that we made, because there were quite a bit with the updating of the student code of conduct. So, and I'll yield to any questions as well as Senator Anderson, President Belcher.
Okay, looks like those are all of our information items so far. I have 4 senators on my speakers list. Would anyone like to get on before we get started? In addition, Senator Flanagan.
So this is just a request, and it's really nitpicky, but board on members is board on members, board on member organizations. So if that can just be updated on all the documents that need a lot to be very nitpicky.
Vice President Hanley, would you like to respond?
The resolution will be updated and formatted correctly, as I also realize that there's no line numbers on this resolution.
And it's also on all the, where it's referenced in every information line, at least as far as I saw.
Yeah, so for context, these have been developed since the summertime before the change was made, but we will go back and fix them. Thank you, Senator Flanagan. Senator Nelson.
I was wondering with SB 62, why you capped it at 3 representatives from the student group?
So part of the reason that we did that was because typically—
Vice President Hanley, would you like to speak?
President
Vice President Hanley.
So part of the reason we did that was we thought that that was an adequate amount to represent the student group as well as the leadership during that meeting. Typically for those board hearings, they're only like president and treasurers. They're the recognized leaders of the student group, but we decided to add a third, as most student groups typically have a vice president that is not on the recognition forms. So we felt that 3 was an adequate amount for that. Again, this was to be very stringent in the fact that most student conduct code proceedings, a person's only allowed to bring 1 to 2 representatives with them in order to represent them or help them through the procedure. And this was drafted in line with most student conduct proceedings, as 1 to 3 is typically the amount that, and I know that avoidance was to not use legal terms, but defendant in this type of situation, so.
Would you like a follow-up?
Yeah.
Yes.
When you're discussing constitutional amendments, were there any additional made, or were you just summing up the changes that were already made with the place?
Vice President Hanley.
These were already approved by the Senate, so no additional changes.
Okay. Senator, we just did Senator Nelson, Senator Tarallo.
Senator Anderson or Vice President Hanley. Will candidates for ASUM be made aware of this, or will they not be made aware of this agreement until after they are elected?
Vice President Hanley.
So once they submit an application and we have all the candidates running as well as writing candidate, well, I can't do it for writing candidates until after the election, but yes, they will be made aware of the changes in an email that I sent out to them. They'll also be made aware, the executives will be made aware the same way during the transition email that I send to them, as they also have to sign it. So it'll be that way if it's a write-in candidate, or if it's a candidate that, or a student that applies to be a senator, it'll be a different process. It'll more than likely be after or before the interview for the applied student, and then for the write-in candidate directly after they turn that expense report in and they're confirmed as an elected senator.
Follow-up?
Yes.
I guess what would be the process if someone was found to, a senator was, or an executive was found to have violated confidentiality agreement and then not impeached and removed by the Senate?
I'm gonna let Senator Anderson answer this one.
So they don't go for impeachment, they're automatic removal. They don't get, because this is a legal document, it's confidentiality for students and it's a violation of our law, so they don't get the impeachment. And the removal threshold is lower than any of the other removal thresholds. It's 50%, so it's 50% plus 1. So it's a pretty serious violation. I don't know a Senate that would allow. My hope would be that they would still remove that, but I mean, I guess they would get to stay on Senate.
Vice President Hanley.
Yeah, and part of that was our original proposal was to just kick them off Senate immediately. but they needed the recommendation from Director Villamose was they needed their process rights to be secured in this process. And so at the beginning of every year, our hope is that the executives would explain the seriousness of the confidentiality agreement, whether that's like a random VP email or whether that's during the first Senate meeting. That way, the Senate that is adjudicating that trial and removal process is aware of the seriousness of a charge if that is ever brought up. And they're also aware that this is something that they absolutely need to follow during the year so that there are no violations of confidential information being leaked to the public, as is the process with every single confidential university committee that students sit on, as well as any confidential stuff that ASUM is to see.
Business Manager Parsons.
Also a question for the authors. So then I think what Senator Trollo was kind of alluding to is if you know that a senator for sure wrote the confidentiality agreement but isn't voted to be removed, could that just open up the doors for like a constitutional review board that the Senate did not follow its own due process of removing the person from office?
I would say that would open up the doors for a constitutional review board. I can't say that that review would be conclusive that they would be removed because it is within the power of the Senate to not remove them. However, my personal opinion is that if someone does violate a confidentiality agreement of this nature, they absolutely should be removed, and I have every bit of faith in next year's Senate to carry out those duties. Senator Anderson.
Yeah, I was going to reiterate a lot of that. I think that if the exec teams at the beginning of the year express the seriousness of this, it is a legal document. It's a binding legal document. We are giving the senators to violate that their due process and the executive to violate their due process, but it needs to be expressed that this is a very serious issue and it can potentially threaten. Like if our Senate can't uphold our own rules, it's going to cause problems down the road. So.
Okay, Vice President Hanley.
Yeah, and the other thing is that this is included in our transition materials and will be updated through our continuity documents that we are starting this year for next year's executives. And there will be a pretty good chunk explaining not only the update to the student conduct code, but also this item in specific so that they know the seriousness of us going through with this procedure and having this housed in ASUM.
Senator Torello, do you want your same time on the speakers list or do you want to be on there again?
I'd rather just respond now and get it out of the way.
So you want to be taken off?
Yeah.
Okay, Senator Torello?
Yeah, so I guess, and I agree that I would hope the next Senate would keep that in mind and be more than likely to remove the senator. But I guess my question is if they didn't, would the entire Senate be in violation of its own codes, or I'm just asking a little bit of clarification.
So I'll just add some context to that. No, I don't think that the Senate would be in violation because this policy allows for them the option to not remove them at a certain threshold. It's just like when we have votes for impeachment now and the Senate doesn't vote for it, we're not in violation just because we didn't vote for that. Senator Anderson, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think we have a bigger problem if we just remove the senator and didn't give the due process. And I think that by putting our own voting threshold, I mean, yeah, we wouldn't be violating any policy. We would be following our policy.
Okay, Senator Flanagan.
So forgive me if this was already gone over, but I'm just curious what would have happened if the senator refused to sign the confidentiality.
I would consider that part of their essential duties of being a senator, and I would think of that as an impeachable offense. Vice President Hanley and Senator Anderson.
Yeah, it's going to be added to the bylaws if that constitutional amendment is passed. So per the bylaws, they would have to sign it.
So may I follow up?
Yes, Senator Flanagan.
To clarify, if they refuse to sign it, then they'll be put up for impeachment or not.
We're going to work out the process later about that type of procedure. Yeah, and I can talk more. Yeah, I'll talk about this later.
I think that concludes my speakers list. Senator Darnell.
This goes back to the MOU. It might be a little nitpicky, but it says that the document to sign for everyone would be provided, and it's like parentheses, like digital footprint. But I mean, if we have the distinction, we might. I personally would rather just see the Senate go digital with that document if it's possible, and if it's not possible, then just keep print. But otherwise, I'm not sure why it's just like in parentheses digital or print.
Can you clarify your question?
Yeah. So I have no idea where it is because I didn't have anything for me, but it's when it speaks about.
Oh, record retention. Yeah,
Yes.
so I'll just answer that. It is our tradition, or not tradition, practice at ASUM to keep paper copies of all of our MOUs so that we can reference them. And additionally, we print them out to physically sign them anyway. So there's no reason not to have a physical copy of that. Senator Anderson?
This is standard language in all ASUM MOUs. They send additional copies, so there's a record of it in case something happens to physical copies. And then they kind of notate it with like date was signed, and then we also keep a physical copy of the actual signatures.
Yeah, no, that's good. I was confused about why it was like in parentheses saying one or the other. I was wondering if it was like I guess I thought it was up to like some certain discretion, but if that's a standard practice then.
Okay, I will admit my speakers list got a little disorganized. Would anyone else like to talk? Anyone left on the speakers list? All right, speak now or forever hold your peace. That ends discussion on the informational item concerning student conduct code and board members organization. We will now move into my committee reports. I actually don't have any. Unit standards did not meet last week, and we went to BOR, and I was not able to attend ASCRC this week because of some last minute things I had to take care of, which I will touch on later in my report, but Senator Corkish can give that committee report later on in the meeting. But I do have something kind of similar to a committee, not quite, and it was a mid-year leadership gathering for the university. That was really interesting, where we talked about all the PFAs and the different actions that had been taken. It was really cool. All the department chairs were there, all the directors were there, all the administration was there. And then I was there for half of it, and then Director Hess from Transportation was there for the rest of it. I do have some bits of good news, specifically concerning PFA 1, and Liaison Reed, you can interrupt me whenever you see fit, but I might say this statistic wrong. He knows exactly which one I'm going to say. But the amount by which retained students has decreased over winter break has been the lowest amount in the last 20 years. That is really exciting. Retention is going really well. And I believe we were at 89% retention. Nope. Nope. 91% retention between fall and spring. So that is super exciting and really good for the university. We also talked a lot about the different initiatives that have been going on with the other PFAs. I will admit I was only there for the first 3, but PFA number 3, Mission First, people always have some really cool stuff going on. Where they develop permission to play values for campus. These are not a marketing tool, but they're rather something that they're encouraging everyone to integrate into their practices. And I believe, oh my God, I'm going to forget them. This is so embarrassing. They are respect, integrity, care for others, and something else. Liaison Reed. So clearly we're not quite up on that yet, but we're all working and learning. Does anyone have any questions about the mid-year leadership gathering? Huh? Accountability. That's the other one. Cool. There was no online public comment this week, but I do have some very exciting news. We moved the button, so it is now on the home page, and it is also on the student government page. So if anyone asks you where the button is, it has been moved. Okay, and then, actually, does anyone have any questions about anything I just talked about? Cool. We have some mass updates. I know I've been talking about the spring student event all year, and I do have to say, unfortunately, Mass has made the decision to postpone that until the next fall. Things have just gotten too hectic on both the UM campus and the MSU campus to plan that, and there's going to need to be a lot of heavy lifting to get students out from the affiliate campuses on this short of a time frame. And we're also not sure that planning a large gathering is the greatest idea in the current climate with the coronavirus. So does anyone have any questions about postponing the spring event? Senator Fulton.
Well, this is more of just like something I wanted to bring up, but I didn't get a chance to at BOR. Would it be a better idea to do like maybe some kind of like tour during the springtime and then like to promote it? That way you could go to like all the smaller campuses and like the tribal schools and be like, hey, this is what we're doing, because being someone who did go to a small school, I know like if we got that email or got that invitation to go to Bozeman or Missoula for this event, we wouldn't go because why would we drive 9 hours for something that potentially couldn't benefit us? Like I understand the point of it, but this is just something I would like to bring forward to your attention. Maybe do like some kind of spring thing, just like a little tour where you send like a regent or someone from OG to actually promote it or like something like that. So people are actually already interested in it before it's just like a random email they get.
Yeah, so theoretically, that would be the responsibility of their own student government leadership to engage them who are already there and mass members. I would be happy to bring that up with OG. I'm gonna go ahead and say right now that no one who is currently a member of mass will have the capacity to travel to all of these campuses during the semester to promote it. If that was something that mass wanted to pursue next year, I'd more than like encourage you to bring that up to them, but I will let Christine at OG know that that was an idea.
Thank you.
Any more questions about the spring event? Okay. I would also just like to give a reminder that applications for student regent are open. So if you know of any students who you think would make a good student regent, please tell them to apply. If they want to apply, they can send that to the Montana Associated Students Gmail. I'm sharing that search. Questions, they can email my president email to ask, or they can call either of the phone numbers on my business card. Does anyone have any questions about the student regent search? Cool. And then the last mass update is we had a discussion about canvassing in the dorms, and it looks like there's a pretty strong interest from Montana Associated students in pursuing a statewide policy about canvassing in the dorms. I'll just give a quick rundown about what the conflict is here. So some campuses allow canvassing in the dorms from various organizations and student governments. Some campuses do not. Our campus is one that does not, and Bozeman is one that does, and the other affiliate campuses have their own sets of rules for that. Any comments about canvassing in the dorms? Senator Jernell.
I guess the biggest question is why doesn't allow it specifically, and also comparatively to MSU? Are there any like differences in like election turnouts as a result of that? If you know those answers.
Yeah, so I kind of know those answers. So specifically to the reason it's not allowed at is because believes that their residents have a certain expectation of privacy, and when they sign the lease to live here, they agree to having no solicitors, and canvassers are viewed as solicitors, so there's just a flat policy that no one can canvass in the dorms. I will share with all of you though that I actually have a conduct violation for canvassing in the dorms my freshman year, so since you hit a little close to home. But then at MSU, if you want to canvass in the dorms, they allow, I think, any organization to do it. They just have to register through the housing office. And I know that they get in their ASMSU elections a significant turnout from freshmen who live in the dorms. But I would say that